Hi, everyone. So this is the leadership meet and greet. My name is Julia. Hi. I'm the chair of the board of directors.
Hi, I'm Amy. I am vice chair, we have two vice chairs of the board of directors, and I'm also a TC member.
Hi, I'm Gautam, and I'm the TC chair.
Jeremy Stanley. One of the Zuul maintainers, chair of the specification pool, SIP for OpenStack. 36 for OpenStack.
So yeah, we basically put this on the schedule, as I mentioned earlier, to give you all an opportunity to ask questions if you don't know what we do as the board or the TC, or as the Zuul maintainer or as the SIP chair. Answer any questions, but we had some really good conversations going on in room 305 yesterday. So this is also a good opportunity to do some of those conversations for anyone who wants.
Conversations in 305 yesterday. Brad, that was great.
Okay, so the question is for conversations 305.
Yes.
Circle back to that.
Yeah, sure.
So also this time is if you have outstanding issues, questions, things you need advice or available. So that's also why we're here. And so does anyone remember yesterday in room 305? What time? I don't remember.
I'm shifting.
Your security.
Security. Apple.
And I think it's also important to understand that Julia and I are elected individual board members. We are not chosen to be board members from our companies. So we represent y'all. Well, if he was here as also an individual board member. He does not represent us. But does anyone have to go back to yesterday to continue those conversations, just as like trying to get y'all to talk? Security. Anyone want to talk security initiatives, concerns?
Maybe I have maybe a more basic question. I think we're on audio in the central.
Should be yes.
So I'm not in. OpenInfra, the user by way of vendor. Over here. So maybe it would be stack rack and kind of what the
Okay, so lot.
as much as you like.
I'm gonna try and boil this down.
Yeah.
So OpenInfra Foundation, actually the OpenStack, doing business as the Open. This was largely a strategic that we were going to best. And so we decided to reframe. And the way that the model works is that our board members from everybody. Like I said, we have third that are members that are named, and third that are funded from our program. And our job as a board is to govern staff. So in a sense, foundation's a 501c6 Corporation, which is a for mutual benefit nonprofit. And that's largely because IRS said no to CFP status. That's a touching topic. People. But anyway, long story short, we care about the community, we care about the software, we care about what we're doing. Largely by high level governance, and under the board directors, you have the individual projects. So you have Zuul, you have OpenStack, you have Kata Containers, StarlingX, and they exist as independent projects with their own governance structures. Even under those governance structures, you have additional governance structures. So, example, no project inside OpenStack is its own governance structure, its own governance structure, and that really allows for those projects to live and choose their own destiny. That makes sense.
And does the OpenInfra Foundation, guide or set a strategic direction for?
So we do not set technical direction for projects. We will chime in, have discussions, we'll provide advice where it's needed, but largely try and both keep a hands-off approach, but also nudge in the right direction where it's necessary. And sometimes a good example of that is we saw there were issues with nitpicking. Itself. Basically, one person would come along and say, I want this code to be this way. Next person would come along and say, I want it to be this way. And all of a sudden, after a few revisions, you're back to the exact same original change. And that's incredibly counterproductive. So we, as a body, said, let's see this. Let's change how we look at this. And we see this with various other efforts. And we occasionally have efforts like the security topic, when we're really didn't like to see that the whole thing with Moreno go down. That happened earlier in the year. I understand why. I want to see it happen again. There's a reason why the foundation staff is also engaged. What's the cyber resiliency?
Eclipse Foundation's open regulatory compliance.
So the foundation staff has engaged that group. Board director is interested in the topic and wants basically to move the needle. So we provide guidance to staff at times, staff work communities, those kind of disjointed relationship that seems to work.
Actually, this is a good opportunity for them about the role of the TC.
Yeah, in the OpenStack TC, where is the we are the governance body above all of the project. So the projects elect their own PTL, and they have their own course that the PTL is in charge of managing and so on. And there is another leadership structure where there is no PTL, but there's a group of people that are in charge of different aspects of project governance. And so we oversee that structure on top. And so there and why is there a need for a two-level thing? Well, it's one of the things is yes, no. As Julia said, we're not imposing specific technical direction on any specific project. No, that's not what the TC does. But what the TC is interested in is how are things going with the project? Are contributors able to contribute to that project? So we kind of try to have a consistent spirit in the community. That's something that we're very interested in ensuring. And for everything we have, we have governance changes when we try to make those, when we're trying to ensure that. And those governance changes come in the form of, so we have a TC charter, if you're interested to look at, there are aspects of things that we do, we are responsible for. And some of it would also come in as one-time resolutions. Hey, we have had to do something because this, and this is what the TC felt in consultations with the community. And the TC also oversees some non-project specific structures, such as there's special interest groups, there are pop-up teams, and these have specific tasks. And the TC also does, works with these special interest groups, project teams, and pop-up teams to kind of work on consistencies across projects. And part of that, we also do stuff like a community-wide code. So these could be, a release specific or multi-release goals, saying where there needs to be a consistent user experience, or there needs to be a consistent security post, or there needs to be Python version support for all of our projects and so on. So you'd be surprised. I think at last count we had about 600-ish repositories. So this stuff is a lot of work to establish that consistency. So that's kind of a lot of the stuff. But Amy's been on the DC for longer, and so has Jeremy in the past. So have I missed something? And Julia as well. Have I missed something? No. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, because you mentioned the community goals. So community goals are overreaching things that the TC is going to say, this is something we as a community need to look at. I mentioned Python versions, which every project. So it's like, okay, by this release, all your projects need to be migrated to this project. This Python version. That's an easy one to say. We may go through stages where, say, Nova is backwards compatible to the previous version, but has moved to the new one, so that if another project is still on the other one, there's some continuity, so we can get to the goal without affecting any users. So those are things that we look at with the project as a whole, whereas someone might come up to us and say, the recent one is Paramico. So how can we either improve Paramico, get off Paramico? Is this a community goal that we think the whole community should work towards? The answer is yes. Then you have someone who writes a spec, you all agree to it, that becomes a community goal that everyone works towards. And the idea being that it's a realistic goal, realistic timeline. We're not going to say by next release, everyone needs to be off this, because we can't. Too large to do something like that.
And another aspect, I think, is the whole release and testing thing that, as users and operators, you're probably used to. All of the OpenStack processes are the same. So you know what to expect from each of these things. That's defined in that governance. And we kind of keep a close tab of that. Although there are teams that are running the release process, and teams that are in charge of the testing process, we make the wider community consensus is driven through the.
Thank you for the work that you guys are doing. I'm just a bit curious, like, how does the electoral process for this committee work, and how can the person vote, or what do they need to have?
So how's the TC voting or the board voting going?
But like the TC, how does one person become a community TC?
Okay. So, I have never been a PTL. A lot of the TC members have been PTLs. But as we talked about earning trust in the Zero to Code workshop yesterday, over time you get known in a community. And twice a year we do elections, and you can self-nominate, but you do not have to be an active contributor on the TC. You do need to be an active contributor and a foundation member to vote. That's the difference between a foundation member and an individual member, is the voting. And we have found that if you do not vote in the board elections for 2 years, you will actually lose your foundation membership. Usually we find out about that when we put together the voting for the TC or the PTL, and someone goes, why didn't I get a ballot? Dropped off, you need to vote, you need to re-register. So twice a year, we go through the election process. We do a joint election between the PTLs, the TC, just timing wise, it ended up becoming, instead of separate elections, a single election cycle. People nominate themselves or get nominated by others from PTLs. If there's more than one person up for a PTL for a project, there's an election, there's only one volunteer. Goes through the same life cycle, but will automatically become the PTL. So then we go to the TC. And in the fall, safe to say fall, autumn, I believe it was 4 seats that were open, and in the more wintry, isn't right, because Australia is on the opposite. In the January, February timeframe is 5 seats. Keep it to an odd number. And when those seats come open, if you're an incumbent, you still have to nominate yourself and go through the process. We encourage new people, we encourage diverse people. It goes to an election, provided that we have that number of nominees. If we do not have the number of nominees, there won't be an election. There's no point. If we have more than the number, we hold an election. There is also a diversity role, which we had to solidify last year because there were too many red hatters that got elected. So we do make sure that there is diversity of companies as well, the TC as well as the board. We thought that board ruling on this applied to the TC. It didn't. It now does. We basically reworded it for the TC so that there can't be too many people from any company positions of leadership. Did I answer your question? Any other questions while I'm standing in the middle with the mic?
It's not a question, it's actually, I'd like to propose something. It's all the board members here, and I know Gotham is aware of what I'm gonna pitch, and I think Carlos is too. Corleone Valencia College. I would like to propose a new special interest group, and it would be geared towards higher ed. But it would not overlap with the scientific research group. The higher ed would deal with open source curriculum of OpenStack materials for instructors and professors wherever that they can reuse this material to teach in their classrooms or at boot camps or whatnot. That would be one type of activity. Other types of activity would be sharing documentation on the boot camps and mentorships and internships that I provide. I could share that with other professors. And then also working alongside with Kendall Nelson. I think she's doing a terrific job trying to pull in other universities and colleges to get them active in this. But I think with the higher ed SIG, then the professors, instructors would have somewhere to go. They would have a group to then we could collaborate, communicate, and work on projects. I mean, that's really what the basis is of working on projects to contribute to the community. And you know, from the security, what was it, the session, there's already one activity I already suggested would be like a video or some kind of tutorial on how to make sure that, what was it, was the security, you weren't, what was it on there, do you remember?
What's the security process?
Yes, what's the security process? Thank you. So something like that. We already have one activity like that, and then I know the Manila project would love to have like a tutorial or some kind of video. So there could be video development also to share openly with the community. So I think there are many ways to contribute through this new special interest group that wouldn't overlap and take away from the scientific group, which is on research. Thank you.
A lot of what you're talking about is the first contact thing. The onboarding and other things. That's the group that was active making the videos that we said were quickly audited. Context. Mentoring used to be part of the diversity inclusion working group. So an option of you can be a higher ed SIG, I think is actually a good idea. Whether it should fall under diversity and inclusion, I'm not sure, versus under the TC. But yeah, I'm the biggest proponent of onboarding and training, and I used to teach OpenStack. So I think what you're bringing is definitely valuable. We just need to find the right home for it. First contact SIG kind of cleared out. Part of that was our meetings, trying to get all the time zones. There were 2 in Australia and 2 of us in the US in different time zones. But yeah, we used to hold something called the Upstream Institute at summits and meetups and other things. That material's still out there, but it's out of date, and that's what we were trying to make the videos for. But like I said, by the time we got the video done, it was already out of date. That's the hard part with videos. But documentation, most valuable thing you can do for any project. And even just someone going through the documentation and contributing any bugs that you find are great places to start. Operators, when they go through and they set up and they find something that a developer never found, we add it to the documentation. It's invaluable. So I think we just have to find the right home for what you're suggesting, whether it's a SIG or a sub part of a working group that already exists. But I do think that be very valuable because it's not just the mentoring and the curriculum, but I think you could also find a home for like MOC, Chameleon, and other groups that maybe aren't on the scientific side, but they're running clouds in universities. So you might end up with both in there.
So I think it's a fantastic idea. I will encourage it. I think Amy's right. We just need to find the right place for it. And I don't think we're gonna figure that out in this room. Can you send an email to the discuss list regarding this and see what we can do?
I was just typing out an email.
To send an email. Excellent. We have 2 other items that were raised in the Etherpad. That I just want to circle back to real quick. If there's no other questions at the moment. One is that contributors find it hard to contribute. Specifically, someone received pushback on a change because the team did not have the hardware test, and I think this is a symptom of perfection is the enemy of good. And the reality is, the team probably should have adopted the patch, but they're probably wanting to try for perfection, which is anti-pattern. There's a middle ground there, and realistically, the team and the contributor need to find that, and or the TC probably need to set that as an expectation that expect good, not perfect. That being said, there's some discussion that's started because of that topic of we can get access or now enable testing of that hardware that we don't tend to see as much of.
Another part was, how does somebody that's trying to contribute but is being turned off because some code review comments or something, what do they find as a way, get help? Like where can they go? Who can they escalate something of an issue with? So I think that's really open for brainstorming, and this is something where I guess we can take some ideas how to improve.
So my immediate reaction is escalation to other cores in the project or other reviewers, maintainers in a specific project, like TC, and just up the leadership chain. And it's not unheard of for even people in board positions to get messages like, hey, I'm struggling with this one thing. And usually it's a case by case advice that we end up providing. We look at the change, we look at dialogue. And usually, there's a middle ground that people tend not to see. They're always looking at something their own perspective. And we kind of see that middle ground as a result, because we have to bring to it. So it is really an individualized interaction at that point. And sometimes it's coaching, guidance in more one direction, but ultimately it's like, let's be helpful. Let's do the right thing. Let's try and have that. Anything else in that one? Okay, someone has a question on how to get some help on bringing life to an important and inactive project.
Uh, Thanks. So this point is specific about Wizard. I don't recall how many months ago I was reading this email about, okay, all these projects are inactive, so they like, I don't know, dropping, whatever. And Dimitri and I were talking about like, okay, maybe this feels like we are more interested in like replicating stuff than seeking a solution to continue the development of an important project. That options out there, they are proprietary, like Trilio in the case of Freezer, or a lot of companies, they have like internal automations that they don't share with the community because they are in some way proprietary as well. So we started talking with I started talking with Dimitri to like instead of PTL, we proposed GPL for that one. But it's been hard because like as Apollo on the talk yesterday, it's like, okay, when the talk yesterday was on the assumption that you have contributors, but what if not? We need to start looking for contributors, for companies that are willing to like do something with the project instead of having this internal automation. And we are working on that, but it's hard. I don't really know exactly what to do or what will be the wording to get companies to interest on that. But yeah, I would like to, I don't know, pointers, ideas on what we can do with this kind of project that are really interesting, and the other options are like they are costing money to people out there. So yeah. Thank you.
So that's a hard problem. Because we realistically can't let projects sit without maintainership. And we need people to be able to, or to be available to address security issues in projects. So the resulting pattern that we've observed is people want projects around because they see it's useful, but if no one's actually fixing the issues in the project, then it's, I don't know.
Attractive nuisance.
Yes, that's a good way of phrasing it. It becomes an attractive nuisance. And that doesn't mean it's not useful. But someone has to take the time to spend the energy to maintain it, keep it working, and if not, then how do we know what its state is? And a really good example is Merino, which really the data source was turned off in 2017. Maybe it's 2018. I don't remember exactly. Jeremy knows.
Jeremy looks it up every time.
Okay.
I'm not looking it up right now, so we'll go with
I don't blame you. So it's hard. And I honestly think when we have projects that sit like that, we end up with technical debt. And then the attractive nuisance of that technical debt is, ooh, let's fix that technical debt and make it useful. Maybe there's a better way. Maybe there's a faster way. That's maybe not that project. And we should also be open to that. We also shouldn't spread our resources too thin. It makes it an even harder problem. So there's no good answer to this other than somehow rally people to it. But if people don't rally to something, then I don't know what we can do.
If there's enough interest in it, then those people who are interested should be actively keeping it alive. But they shouldn't just be volunteering to then be the PTL of it at the last minute to keep it alive. So if they haven't been contributing it to keep it alive, maybe retirement is the best answer. If they feel that strongly that it should be kept alive, they should be actively working on it. Because then you do get into the problem of there's something broken on it, no one's noticed it, and it becomes a problem. So there has to be that fine line of those people who are interested stepping up and leading it, contributing to it, or just saying, we just can't do it, let's go ahead and retire it. And rather be proactive on retiring it than us spending 2-3 cycles trying to keep it alive and then being stuck and having to.
Some part of that question. I mean, so you've heard these are this is the DC stance on things, saying we don't want to let a project sit without mentorship. But some part of that question, you seem to ask, how do I drum up volunteers who want to keep up this project? So one of the things about this particular project is I didn't really have that kind of visibility before I got onto the DC. I was because I never paid attention, but I suppose that it can be solved, like constantly making noise and asking for help, like PTG presence, weekly meetings, OpenStack this email list. So these are really good resources to try to say, this is what the project's doing, this is where we need help. And many a times when we've made such noise, there are people that have opportunities. Like, for example, I mean, Corey's in the room. We've worked with his students a lot in areas of tech debt in different projects, just because we didn't have anybody else that could work on those things. So we've used those routes. So we needed one mentor to try to spearhead a project, have a bunch of new contributors who'd come and contribute to the project. And the other part is, I mean, Kendall would pay attention to because she has other contacts pretty much in the same direction. And then we had all these Google Summer of Code, Outreachy, and other things where we would, again, a lot of investment from mentorship perspective, but we were able to get some help in completing some things. And that way, keep the activity around the project going. But then again, you do need to ask the question, is this still required? Is this project still, actively being used? And is there interest in this? Because you don't want to spread your resources too thin across an already, a small community that we are and the resources that we do have.
Gonna say we're like on time.
Another option just quickly that has come up very recently, like ish, is the European Union Sovereign Tech Fund effort has started a new maintainer funding initiative. I forget the exact name of it, but if you look up their website, basically they will provide government funding to pay open source maintainers to develop and maintain software that's being used. So that is potentially an option if people are working on projects that can get that approved. Certainly, if there are people who are like interested in, say, maintaining Freezer, but don't have an employer who's willing to pay them to do that and would like to seek government funding to pay them to do that work instead, then they can talk to me and other folks on the foundation staff about helping them with the application.
Before we cut into anybody's lunchtime, I don't know who's hungry, who's not. Are there any other questions? I do want to keep us on. And this is the value of having a session like this, is we're people, we're approachable. Don't be afraid to reach out to any of us. We'll really share our emails. So thank you all for attending and your questions, and your participation. And enjoy your lunch.
Thank you. Thank you.